All right. For those of you who have been with us since the very beginning of the Shear Line podcast, you may remember the original opening monologue. Included a sentence, "We are shining a very bright light on the bullies, the bluffers, and the gaslighters who mistake coercion for competence and make you cringe when you hear the word negotiation." Now that line might not be in the intro anymore, but make no mistake, it's still at the core of our mission. I have and always will dislike bullies in life and in negotiations, and that's being diplomatic. I mean, in real estate in New York City, there are plenty of agents who use intimidation, threats, bluster, gaslighting, and coercion to get the next commission or the next listing. And we're going to focus primarily on dealing with those negotiation bullies today. But there's also a bigger picture to discuss. We're living in a moment where bluster, intimidation, ultimatums, and hard bargaining are being sold as leadership, where cruelty is being reframed as strength, where fear is being used as a strategy to force people to be silent for their own safety, and where immoral and unethical behavior is being normalized or even encouraged. And all of that bleeds into our industry. Well, this behavior thrives on one thing more than anything else, and that's our hesitation. Will we give them permission to continue? They draw power from that hesitation. And what do we know about power? It's perceived, not absolute. Bullies understand this better than anyone. They've learned to act with indifference, to pretend that their BATNA or their walkaway position is stronger than their opponent or counterpart. They say things like, "We really don't care. We have other options," or "take it or leave it." Not because it's true, but because if they can make you feel that they don't need a resolution, a solution, or a compromise, and that you do, the power balance shifts. You start to feel weaker simply because you care about the outcome, and you do care. It's not just fear. It triggers a moral conflict in you because the stakes matter, the outcomes matter, because resolution matters, and for you and your client that you're representing, all of it matters. And that's how gaslighting works. It's not about changing the truth. It's about getting you to challenge yours, to spend energy thinking, am I the one overreacting? Is this really a big deal, as big a deal as I think it is? It's a mental drain, and it's a cognitive overload. So today, we're stepping directly into the shear line, into fear or favor, risk and reward, the courage of conviction, and the cost of our dignity. This episode is not just about how bullies operate, but how they are disarmed, how they are dismissed, exposed, and confronted, and how we can change the way that we build our own personal power, how we show up and start negotiating from a position of strength. And with that very heavy, purposefully so, intro, I want to welcome back everyone's favorite part-time co-host, Jay Billiot. Jay, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well.
We're covering a pretty heavy topic today.
Just a lighthearted chat about bullies today.
Yeah, I think it strikes a lot of people. And
yeah.
And for those of you watching where that opening already made you uncomfortable, I hope that there's something that you'll glean from this podcast and that you'll take away that empowers you to really think differently about how you engage with people who use intimidation, gaslighting, and bully tactics in negotiation. So, Jay, before we jump right in, and you're going to ask me a series of questions, we'll ask each other some questions and get our mutual insights into this. But I do want to know one thing. Did you get your socks this Christmas?
I almost didn't because they were on the short list and I didn't get them. However, we do my family's version of a white elephant gift exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Go back a couple episodes and listen.
Go back to the holiday
And
episode.
I did end up getting socks as my quote unquote white elephant gift. Yeah, and I was very excited because I rely on socks every year.
So Jay's got one pair of new socks.
No. It was like 6 pairs.
Okay, all right.
Six pairs.
So you're set. You're set.
I mean, one pair would not cut it.
Well, yeah. I'm glad that you're set for the year with socks, and now we can move on. We're not we didn't have to divulge the subject of your story either. That was, you got to protect the innocent on that one.
No.
Yeah.
We're actually probably going to edit that comment out of this podcast.
All right. I don't want to be accused of bullying you. So let's get started.
Okay. We're just going to jump right in.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So the first question, why do bullying tactics even work? Why do they work in business? Why do they work in real estate? And why do they work in high profile negotiations across the board? Why?
Yeah. Well, and I'll first say they do work. And that's the jumping off point here, because it'd be very easy if we were to say, oh, just don't let it work. I mean, it works point blank. It works. And it works for a couple of different reasons. One is because we allow it to continue. We allow it to happen. And we'll talk about some of the tactics and strategies and things we can do to prepare ourselves so that we give less energy, give less oxygen to bullying. But this is even before we have a chance to rationally respond or logically respond when somebody is bullying us. All of us have a physiological and a psychological response immediately. Our primal brain goes into that fight or flight mode. And so it is designed to make us uncomfortable, and it does. And so there are things that we can do to course correct there, but don't make any mistake. We all have an initial response that is immediate and that is just part of how we're wired. And some people, we talk about the fight or flight, right? Some people, they fight back. They respond to that bully in the same way that the bully has engaged them. And it's not that bullies in a negotiation, that's not what they're looking for, right? They're not trying to engage the person who's going to fight back. They're trying to engage the person, as I said, that hesitates. And when I mean hesitate, we'll go into that a little bit deeper, I think. But when I say hesitate, I'm talking about the person that shrinks into that safety, that safe zone, where they indicate to the bully that, hey, I'm going to tolerate this, right? And so, and that tends to work even more with people who are very highly empathetic,
right,
or who are highly ethical. And the bully understands that. They know, just like I said in the opening, that when you have something to lose, if they act as though they don't, and you do, you all of a sudden feel like you're in a weaker or powerless position. So that's usually how it works. And then no matter what, no matter if you push back, if you go into fight mode or if you go into safety mode or flight mode, either way, that initial reaction, it's giving away power. And that's the thing I think that's really important, is that the fighting is not the answer, right? The fighting back is not the answer, but the shrinking is not the answer either. Because what happens then is that when the bully uses the way they do it is they'll use extreme positions, they'll use extreme anchors, right? They'll ask for something that is completely unreasonable unless we challenge that anchor, unless we try to discredit that anchor or challenge it. We end up justifying what we give away to them. We move the goalposts, we move our goals to say, okay, well, I didn't give away that much. They didn't get everything that they wanted. Meanwhile, they took such an extreme position that they weren't looking at the end to get everything they wanted. They took that extreme position so they could move you from what that center is all the way to some extreme position.
And for all you know, you were moved to exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
They may have not even wanted everything they were trying to bully you into.
And they may at the end kind of give you a little, oh, you did such a great job. And, they'll give you a nugget to make it seem like what you got was fair. Right. Meanwhile, you know that what you gave away didn't meet your minimum goals or didn't meet your client's minimum goals. And, foreshadowing, that's an incredible part, being very clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, so that if you don't, it's not a matter of whether you're being bullied or not. It's a matter of whether you're meeting your goals. And if you're not, that negotiation should not happen.
Right.
So,
which leads to my next question. So you had mentioned that we're going to talk about some ways to deal with bullies, which kind of makes it sound like this is simple, guys. Just do these 3 steps and you won't be able to be bullied. Yeah. And so I know it's probably not that simple, because if it were, it would be done.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. We would
If
just
you
shut
had
it
the
down.
answer, you'd be a millionaire, and we would all
Exactly.
There wouldn't be any
I'd
bullies.
rid the
Everyone
world
would
of
be very
bullies.
happy.
And,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we deal with it? What are the tricks, and is it simple? Is it as simple as it kind of sounds?
No, it isn't. And there are tactics. We'll talk about some of the tactics. I'll mention them, some of them right now. So there are tactics that we can use. Like Harvard has one that that they use very frequently. It's called name it to tame it. And this works with whether you're dealing with a bully. And usually bullying behavior comes from people who are highly competitive negotiators. Competitive negotiators aren't necessarily bullies, but some of the tactics that competitive negotiators use are bullying tactics. They're intimidation, they're hard bargaining, they're meant to push you back, right?
Right.
And so Harvard has this phrase, name it to tame it. It actually came from an author who wrote a book about dealing with children. But Harvard now uses it as a core tenet of how to deal with competitive tactics. Naming it to tame it means that you identify the approach, you identify the tactic that they're using, and you call it out, like good cop, bad cop, for instance, or the nibble tactic, or a red herring. All of you say, I know what you're doing, I see what you're doing, right? So one part of this is understanding what these tactics are and really understanding how to identify them and then calling it out. And oftentimes, a competitive negotiator or a bully you're not going to keep them from being a bully. You're not going to change them from being a bully. But if they're using a tactic that's not working or that has been exposed, they may be likely, or sometimes, or oftentimes, they'll just move on to the next tactic. So you shut down that tactic and make them move on. So name it to tame it is one. There's another one also from the Harvard program, Deepak Malhotra, who I've talked about on this podcast before, who's brilliant. He talks about process before substance. So if they want to go directly to the substance, they want to immediately start to go for your throat, essentially. You stop and you say, we're going to set some groundwork here. We're going to set some barriers, some guardrails around what is and is not going to be acceptable in this negotiation. And when you take control there and talk about process before substance, you oftentimes can get compliance or get agreement from the other person, or you see very clearly this is the red flags are going off.
Right.
And if I see these things continue to happen, or if it's so bad right off the top, you want to just shut it down, or you want to take a little bit of silence. And that goes into I said hesitation. Right. And I know when we were talking about this early, when we were when I was going through the outline and I had read in the introduction that you were going to talk about hesitation, and my immediate thought was, wait a minute, we talked about that. We talked about that in Minnesota Nice, episode 1. If you haven't seen it, go back to episode 1. It is arguably our best work. Arguably that was all downhill from the pilot episode.
Exactly. We talked about the pros and cons of Minnesota Nice, and one of the pros was it does cause you to pause. It causes you to take pause and not just blurt out your knee-jerk reaction.
And I think that was your advice, which was so fantastic in that episode, was that what I realized I needed to do is take a pause, take a moment to breathe. And the thing that's great about that, so that's not the hesitation I'm talking about. No. Hesitation in dealing with a bully, when they see that you hesitate, that you go to that safe place, that's when they see their opening, right? When we slow things down, and that's another tactic, to slow things down, to take a pause, like your words that you use, the pacing of your sentences, they're hot and they're going a mile a minute. And sometimes you being the one to just take a moment to slow it down, and then we're going to talk about asking questions, but pause, lower your voice, take a lighter tone, and just get them to see that you're not following them where they are, but you're also not intimidated.
Right.
I'm not intimidated. So that what that does, that pause or that slowing of things down, is it allows us, our prefrontal cortex, to kind of catch up, so that we can actually think about a rational response, or one that does not give away power.
Doesn't give away power, and it also doesn't give them leverage to continue, right? Because you don't know, they might try another tactic, but tactic might be, the next one might be just more bullying.
Yeah.
It might be to be even worse.
Yeah.
So it's good to have no
That's a good point.
reaction.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want, and in that hesitation, they're looking for you to retreat.
Yeah.
Right. And they sense it, like dogs can sense if you're afraid of them.
Yeah.
Was that a mean analogy? I don't know, but they can sense
It's
your
true,
fear,
yeah.
and then they're just going to go
yeah.
for the jugular.
Yeah.
And I think what you said about sort of acknowledging it is a very good point, because I think it's very fair to say to someone, I see that you're trying to bottom line this.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that you're trying to bottom line this.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe if you bottom line this nicely, I'll bottom line this nicely,
Yeah.
and then let the negotiation
Then
start.
we can start the
and then we can start the
negotiation.
negotiation. Because I am all for saving a lot of chit chat. I've actually said to people before, I need you to bottom line this for me. I've got 20 minutes. Like, you bottom line it, I'll bottom line it,
Yeah.
and we'll go from there. Because
Yeah.
I think that's important. And I think it's also good to let them know, I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I know what
I
you're
see
doing.
it.
The hard
Yeah.
part is, like you said, when you do start to feel that retreat inside, because you're not the type of person that enjoys this type of conflict, and they start to see that, getting the strength or the foresight or the awareness to even know, wait, this is happening. What can I
Yeah.
say and do in this very moment?
Well, and that brings me, so I'll mention a couple other little tactics that I think are important, but that brings me to the other side of this coin of how do we prepare, or is
Right.
there a simple answer? And
Right.
obviously the answer is no. These are all tactics that may work, but there's another side of this coin. So first of all, a couple of other things, asking good questions. And what I mean by good questions is asking open-ended questions and not allowing the other person to shut those questions down. I'm a big proponent of, if I'm in a conversation with someone, they're like, Eirik, I've got 2 minutes. I got 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got 10 minutes worth of questions, right? So instead of going, okay, okay, which one do I want to ask you, right? It's, okay, you have 2 minutes now. All right, I need 15 minutes of your time. So when do you have 15 minutes?
Please use these 2 minutes to schedule.
Yeah, to schedule a 15-minute
Yeah,
conversation
sure.
with me. I'm not going away. I've got questions.
Yeah.
And then I'll fall back on always, like, what is the common goal here? The common goal is to do a deal. I'm not sure right off the bat why you're taking a position that's so adversarial when I've got a client who wants to buy your apartment, you've got a client who wants to sell one, right? And that goes to some of the questions that we want to ask are to expose the risk.
Right.
Because as I said in the opener, they want to act like they don't have any need to compromise, any need to come to a solution. There is no risk on their side, right? They have nothing to lose, when that's absolutely not true.
Right.
So when we ask questions to expose that, what is the interest of their client? What do they want? What do they fear?
Right.
What is that? What does your client, what does risk look like to them? I'm going to ask all those questions, and you don't have to answer them, but it's not going to stop me from asking open-ended questions to gather as much intel as I
Right.
possibly can.
Okay, I'm going to stop you because I kind of forgot that we were doing this,
Yeah.
and that kind of leads to the next question that I have for you, because I know we're going to get back to this a little bit later on. But yes, we know that bullying works, but what is the motivation? What is the driving factor that leads people to that tactic? Like, why should that be your go-to? It works, but why? But what is the why? Why choose it? There's other ways to win. People win all the time.
Yeah. I mean, there's a behavioral scientist named Daniel Kahneman, which a lot of people probably know. And also Amos Tversky is another person that study this, and they study something called loss aversion, and a lot of our audience may know what loss aversion is. But the fact is we as human beings are wired to protect ourselves from loss, much more than we are to go for that desire for gain. And to make it kind of quite simple, we as human beings feel the loss of $100 about 2 to 2.5 times as stronger than we feel the gain of $100. So someone would have to give me $200 to $250 to make up for the feeling of loss that I get from $100. So we are wired to avoid loss. And that's at the core of it for bullies, is they know that we are wired for loss. So what happens within us is when somebody comes at you, a negotiator comes at you with that bluster and that intimidation and that bullying, what happens to us is that we feel as though look like they're on solid ground, because they're acting like they have nothing to lose. And when it seems like they have nothing to lose, then conversely, it seems like we have much more to lose, and we go into that loss aversion mode. And then that bluster kind of takes that situation from each party has something to gain or something to lose to this psychological illusion where there's only one side that's exposed. And that's why loss aversion as a tactic can be so impactful when people make us feel like we have something to lose.
And so why does this bullying and this intimidation and bluster, why is that so dangerous to the people that want to do it the right way? Why are we? I'm grouping myself. I'm putting myself in the group of the good people. Why are those of us that want to do good so susceptible to this tactic?
I'm going to leave that on a cliffhanger because we need to take a break. So we'll be right back after this.
From residential and commercial closings to litigation, Romer DeBoss is your full-service real estate law firm. We blend big firm knowledge with boutique-level attention, delivering outcomes that exceed every expectation. Contact us at romerdeboss.com.
Looking to stage a property but on a tight budget and timeline? Stage with Stage and Fold. Stylish, lightweight, foldable, 3D printed cardboard furniture that looks real. Quick delivery and easy assembly. Staging starts at just $199 a month per room, and setup takes less than 30 minutes. Contact us today to stage smarter, sell faster, save thousands with Stage and Fold.
All right, and we are back. Now, I left you on a cliffhanger, and Jay, you were talking about bluster and
Yes.
and why it works on people who care.
Yes.
And one thing to note is that bluster is a form of gaslighting, and what gaslighting is, the origin of gaslighting is a movie that was called Gaslight, and it was about somebody basically using bullying tactics to challenge someone else's reality. And that's what, as I said in the opening, that's what it does. It creates this artificial urgency in us. It distorts our reality, and it reframes our resistance as somehow weakness. It's like, this is our final offer, and you're being unreasonable, and you're lucky we're even talking to you. It's that kind of a thing where people say that to you in a way for you to challenge. Oh, maybe I'm the one who's being unreasonable here, and that's just emotional coercion. And as I said in I think a previous answer, one of the things that bullies focus on, or one of the traits that they pick up on, is people who are empathetic and people who are ethical. People who typically will not just say, I don't care, and they have a very strong sense of their obligation to their client or their obligation to the outcome. So that's why it seems like it's more geared toward that type of person, somebody who is a little bit nicer. That's the target, right?
So they're the target, but what then makes these high-profile agents, these agents with years of experience, what makes them want to use this intimidation? Like, what sort of gives them the, I guess, why do they feel they can do that? Why do they feel they can put the people who are trying to be good in that position?
Well, oftentimes we see it with people who are more experienced, or I would say higher profile agents, people that are very successful. I mean, it like I said, this works, and so they end up finding success in this because the people that they're up against continuously allow it to work, and the more experience they get. I mean, just like we have that it's natural to feel that safety instinct. It's also natural for us to connect to like what we call ancient social instincts, like status, power, survival in groups, and belonging. So when you have someone who's got a lot of experience, what they have shown through their ability to be successful is that status and that belonging. And we naturally think that, oh, they must be more powerful. That power feeds on itself. And so because we see those things just in our primal brain, we give them more status. And it doesn't hurt that they keep getting listings, and the people that, especially if they're in high dollar amounts, if they're somebody who's dealing in with high net worth clients or with high profile luxury listings, we also either subconsciously or consciously see that the people that are hiring them to do that job must also believe that they belong, or must also give them credibility. And so all of that kind of cascades. We see that they're successful, and the people that are hiring must think that there's something great about them. And so we then take a weaker position because, again, they act like they have nothing to lose, and all of that stuff kind of feeds into it.
Well, it's interesting, and you and I talked about this a little bit, but it's not just something you see in your industry. It's something I see in your industry because of social media, and I don't, and you can comment on this. Is social media helping this cause, or is it hurting this cause? You know, because we sort of live in a time where bullying is getting visibility, and bullying is getting rewards, and it's the clips that you see on social media, and it's all over reality TV. I'm not a huge fan of. I love TV and I love a lot of reality TV, but I do not like reality TV shows that pit people against one another. Yeah. I will never watch a reality show that puts a group of women in a room and pits them against one another. I think it's terrible. And this is now pretty prevalent in the real estate industry. Yeah. You know, and we all know that conflict makes good TV. Yeah. Bullying makes good TV. Yeah. So is all of this exposure hurting the cause? Like, is bullying becoming more prevalent because of this?
Yeah, I think the short answer is I think yes. I mean, look, the idea that this kind of television or this kind of content sells, I don't think that's new, right? I think that's the tale as old as time. But with all of these, especially with reality TV, where it's not scripted, or it's quote unquote not scripted, where what you think or what you're supposed to be looking at is reality in front of you, you see this behavior. And look, I mean, part of it is we get a dopamine fix. We get an adrenaline fix, and we see the threat, but there's no consequence. There's no risk to us personally. We see the threat on TV. So this makes good TV. People want to see this, even if it's just to observe it, to see what it looks like, to get that adrenaline from seeing it, or to have that moral, kind of moral authority where they're like, I would never do that. Like I'm looking at this, but that's not something I would ever do, right? And so we get kind of that moral authority by watching it. But so so people I don't think watch TV or reality TV necessarily because they're bullies. But going back to the short answer is yes. The reality is a lot of these shows are showing that this behavior has some efficacy or is successful. And or it's the shortcut to getting what you want. And it could be a reality TV show, or it could be just watching the agent down the hall from you in your office who's constantly screaming at somebody, but is doing $10 million deals. And you go, maybe I should try this. This is what I should do. And you may not be inherently a competitive negotiator or a bully. You may not look at yourself as a bully at all, but you put that veneer on, or you put that, you put on the show, and you think you can go out there and just bully your way into a deal. So I do think that that television, that movies, that these shows, especially reality TV, they do fuel this.
They fuel it. And not only do they make you feel like you can succeed in a negotiation, they make you feel like you can succeed at social media. They make you feel like you can succeed at TV.
Yeah.
You know, they're not taking the nicest real estate agent they can find and putting her front and center on a reality TV show.
No, that wouldn't be exciting.
That's
right?
like Little House on the Prairie. You know, that's a totally different genre. But even in the last 15 years, I have seen these tactics escalate on TV. I mean, do you remember? We didn't talk about this, so we're going on a tangent. We're going on a tangent.
Good,
but
I love tangents.
do you remember like when the controversial show on TV was can I say what it's called? Love It or List It, where the real estate agent would be like, I want them to list it. And the designer would be like, I want them to love it. And then if the real estate agent shows them three more places, if they find something they like better, they sell it. Otherwise, they go with the designer's design, you know, if she can impress them, and they keep it. Right. And that was the controversy. Like it was these two people like, you know, like it was all play, and you knew it was a joke, but that's not what it feels like anymore. Yeah. You are actually in many cases watching somewhat, I assume, real bullying, real tactics happening on the screen.
Yeah, and I mean, Bess talks about this idea, this what reality TV in the real estate space is and is not, and you know, no one wants to watch the version of what we do as real estate professionals that actually exists. You know, where we're slogging it out, and you know, we get board approval for the co-op, and then wait 4 weeks to get to a closing table. You know, no one wants to watch that.
You could go a whole season and nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Two deals fell through.
Yeah, exactly. Still waiting on board approval. All right, see you next season.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and you know, so that, you know, that's true, but also it's flooded now. So I mean, I was listening to a podcast today, and this somebody who does social media, tries to feed your funnel. You know, he's trying to give you tactics and things like that to win on Instagram or win on social media. And the reality is that they all spend so much time. The content is secondary to the hook, right? What you want is that first 2 seconds to be as inflammatory or as controversial or as something as possible, even if the rest of the reel is just pretty normal and tame. Right. And we see this with you know, the tiles on YouTube videos, you know, these extreme tiles where things are blowing up in the background, and it's like somebody talking about how the interest rate changed for a quarter of a point.
Exactly.
And so like we see that all the time now, but it's just, you know, I think it's just amplified.
Right. You're right. Okay, I'm going to get us back on track a little bit now. So a lot of the discussions we have are about agents doing their due diligence and managing expectations and ensuring a smooth transition, you know, to make sure everything goes lovely.
Should be.
Yeah. So why are these then the ones that are being the bullies? Like, right? Like why are the representatives the one being the bullies?
Yeah. Interestingly, I mean, we can go back to what we just talked about with reality TV and how some of this is learned behavior, and it's not them. It's not who they actually are. They think that this works, and they go home at night and they just, you know, they have to take 3 showers. So it's not that people, you know, I don't think that most people who are, I'm getting, this is, I don't know, maybe this is my opinion, maybe this is controversial. I don't think that at the core, even most bullies are bad people. They behave badly. They were treated badly. They've learned this behavior, and this has been something that works as a coping mechanism for them to get through life, right? And it works. Again, we go back, like they can terrorize people, and it ends up, you know, working for them unless they meet the right person who will shut it down. So there's that part of it. But also, you know, there's this other aspect of it where I don't think a lot of these people, if they were negotiating their own deal, their own property, they would not behave the same way that they behave as the representative for their client.
That's
so
interesting.
Yeah, so there's again that kind of that I'm able to almost play with house money. And if I don't see my fiduciary responsibility to my client clearly, if I don't have that ethical and moral compass and that empathy where I know that my job is to actually maximize the gain for my client. That is my job. And it's not to make the other person feel like garbage. It's not to bully someone into a corner. My job is to maximize the gain for my client. But it's like playing with house money. If you don't have that compass, you go out there and you start acting as if you just start playing a role, playing a part because you think it might work. Even if your client has something to lose, even if your client doesn't have the power balance, even if they really are at risk or there's a fear of loss or a fear of failure on the other side. So sometimes, and that sometimes is the easiest egg to crack, is the one where they're just playing this role and you start asking questions like, how does your seller feel about the way that you're representing them? This kind of conversation that we just had was you screaming into the phone for 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Is your seller aware that you are pushing away every great buyer who comes through the door who may want to purchase their apartment? I want to expose that there's risk there, and I want them to think about that risk. And then the other part of this is that it may be that it's the client. So you have the agent playing with house money and just kind of going out there and just bulling a china shop. But in other cases, you've got clients who are very competitive, who are bullies themselves, and who instruct their agent to go out there and just start throwing punches. And the agent, in my opinion, in that case, has an absolute responsibility to have a conversation with their client about what they will and will not take. Because if they're going to bully, they're asking them to go out and bully the other side. The likelihood is they're getting bullied themselves. They have to have a conversation with that client about what they will and will not accept, but also have a conversation with what is in the best interest of that client. You want me to go out there and start screaming at people. I have this right now with a deal that I'm about to close where there are just too many voices. Everybody's upset. Everybody's frustrated. And you want me to go out there and start screaming at people, but that is not going to get us what we want.
Right.
That's not going to get us our closing date. That is not going to get us the best possible deal for you. And having that conversation is high level and extremely important and crucial when you have a client who's leading you like that.
And I think those sort of boundaries are pretty important to set at the beginning. Like, I can't imagine someone working with you for any length of time and then saying, I want you to go yell at these people, because I think anyone that knows you knows that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell them why.
Right.
I'm going to tell them that we're far more powerful doing it this way.
Right.
And I want you to hear me. I want to provide that value proposition as to why you benefit more with the way that I negotiate. Right. And my intention is to get you every single ounce of value that I can get you, but I don't think that it's going to happen the way that you want me to conduct myself. And here's why.
So I have a question for you, unprepared question. So you helped me purchase my condo my co-op that I'm living in, and they did not do much negotiating.
No.
Like when we went in, but it wasn't. Well, number one, you have to have an agent that you trust, and obviously I trust you. I'm here.
Good, thank you.
I'm sure there's a lot of editing. He doesn't entirely trust me, but there's like how was that negotiation? Like, because I know that because we talked about a lower price, and I know you went to them and you came back and you said, here's the deal. Yeah. And you were like, this is their bottom line, and there was these other bottom lines, and it didn't sound, it was still a good deal.
Yeah.
How did they negotiate their stance?
Well, it was very collaborative. First of all, that negotiation was very collaborative, but just because the other side is being nice to me doesn't mean that I'm going to give in on value for my client. What I am trying to uncover on your behalf is, where can we get a deal done? And if I can ask the right questions to uncover that, and I've got to have one eye on whether I believe it's true, right? I've got to, are they bluffing? Are they being truthful? Are they being honest? Do I believe that where we are going to end up represents the best possible deal for you? I don't just come back to my client, well, this is what they said, so if we want to get a deal done, this is what we got to do.
Right.
I ask a series of questions that uncover what I believe to be the truth. I ask questions about what's important to the seller. I ask questions that reveal what value elements we can utilize to exchange to increase the value of that deal and make the pie bigger. But at the end of the day, when I believe that I know where the deal is possible, Then the question becomes, this is what I think we can do. Does this exceed our minimum goals? If it meets our minimum goals, obviously we want to try to get as close to our end of the zone of possible agreement as possible, right? So there's always a zone in a deal, and that's where the deal is going to get done. It's somewhere in that zone, assuming that there is one. And so once we identify where we believe in that zone the deal is going to happen, the question is that something that you're comfortable with? And if it's not, well, then we take our shot and we say, that's not acceptable to us. And we are willing to walk away from that deal if it doesn't meet our minimum goals. But, that's part of, I think, what is valuable about a good real estate professional is my job is not just to just pick a number and say, let's go after this. My job is to ask a series of questions to try to uncover where the deal is likely to happen, and then come up with a strategy with you that is going to help you get what you want.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I always kind of wondered, because they could have very easily taken the position of the bully and said, it's this or nothing. Yeah. And I trusted you. And actually the whole process was very smooth. But the owner of that unit was in a very specific situation. Yeah. I was in a situation, and all I know is we had a conversation and you said, you'll be in there in 2 weeks. And I said, great.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
Sell my soul. I'll be in there in 2 weeks. That's all we need.
Speaking of selling your soul, we got to sell our souls for our sponsors. Maybe that's not the best way to do it. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country, and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
Hi, I'm Evan Greenberg with Langdon Title. I specialize in title insurance across New York, helping real estate attorneys, agents, and brokers close with confidence. I solve problems fast and keep your deals moving. Contact me anytime.
All right, and we are back. Let's get back into it, Jay. Go for it.
To sort of not wrap it up, but to sort of wrap it up a little bit. Let's say someone is facing a bully tomorrow, or is in a situation where they're currently facing a bully in negotiation. What can they do? What are just some short, easy tips for them to do tomorrow?
The first thing I'll say is, and I don't think we've mentioned this throughout the podcast, when we're talking about representing a client. So when in our negotiations, we're typically representing a principal of that negotiation, a buyer, seller, a landlord, or a renter. It is I talked about it, having conversations if your client is a bully, but having a conversation to set expectations with your client about what could happen in the negotiation, who the other negotiator might be, even if you don't know them yet. This could happen in the first conversation that you have with a buyer or seller or a landlord or renter. But having that conversation to set expectations about what could happen if we are engaged by someone who's using this type of behavior, and what they are willing to allow. You're gonna have to have a conversation with them about what you're willing to allow. 100 times out of 100, in my experience, that meeting with that client to set expectations ends with them saying, no way do I want to lose power or to put you in that position or to put myself in that position where somebody is using these kinds of tactics to get what they want.
Right.
So they give you permission before you even enter into that conversation with that bully. They give you permission to have the kind of conversation that you know that you should have. And that's a lot of times when we shrink, a lot of times that we as agents, we may be absolutely willing to put up our dukes and fight a bully, right? Mm-hmm. We may not be the kind of person who kowtows to a bully or who bends the knee to the bully. But now you're faced with your client's interests, your client's money, the obligation that you have with that client, and you start to think differently about it. If you have that conversation with a client, now you know what you have the ability to do when the moment happens. You don't have to shrink first, that hesitation piece, right, where they start to see, aha, I got him, right? You don't have to shrink first. You know exactly what your client wants you to do and is willing to allow you to do. And now you're emboldened, you're empowered to have the conversation that you really should have with that bully, even if it means that negotiation falls apart. Your client knows that there's a greater than 0% probability that that conversation with that bully is going to turn into something where you have to say, I'm done. I'm not doing this. This is not how I negotiate. I am not willing to take your abuse. When you can figure yourself out, when you can calm down, when you can, I don't know what's going on in your day or if this is just always how you operate, but this isn't happening. So I'm going to be free between 2 and 3 p.m. this afternoon.
Right.
I'll expect a call from you between 2 and 3 p.m. If you cannot call me between 2 and 3 p.m., I will expect a text or an email from you to let me know when you're available. I'm taking control of the future conversation and I'm letting them go. And if that means that they walk away and never come back, that deal was never meant to happen in the first place. And it was just going to be the beginning of the problems that we were going to face with that person. Right. So having that permission is huge. Well, I want to come back to the other side of the coin because we talked about some of the tactics, right, but then we didn't talk about that other side of the coin. So it's a great little thing to save at the end. Tactics, a great line, a clever comeback, like, okay, those things may work in certain circumstances, and there's not one like magic bullet. Right. And so these tactics are useful. They're very, very helpful, and to be armed with them or to know that you have them at your disposal, the name it to tame it, the process before substance, all of that matters. But the reality is that we as negotiators, we as real estate professionals need to spend time on our self-confidence. And I'm talking to agents who have been in the business for 4 or 5 decades, who still, at the end of each deal, are like, that was the worst experience I've ever had. I felt like I just kind of rattled around for 3 months. Who have still never learned to understand where their personal power is and to really lean into the power that nobody can take from you. We have situational power, we have personal power. Situational power depends on who's got the power balance, depends on all these factors, market power, knowledge, expertise, sound logic, all of these sources of power. Personal power is mine. No one takes that from me. And we have to, as people, as real estate agents, as anybody, find that self-worth, that self-confidence, that personal power so that we're not trying to use a one-line or a tactic to get us through this. It's something that we're prepared for, we're comfortable with, and that we're comfortable with the outcome, whether it is positive or negative, whether the deal happens or the deal doesn't happen. We know that what we're doing is right by our client and right by our own self-worth and dignity. There's something I've been working on, just kind of to add to this. There's something I've been a metaphor that I've been working on. I've had 4 knee surgeries, 3 ACL replacements and a total knee replacement. So I spent over 4 years of my life in rehab. And after my second knee surgery, they started doing they have this practice in 2012, 2013 that kind of came into prominence or has become commonplace. And it's called pre-habilitation or prehab. And what you do is you spend time a couple of weeks before you go through the surgery, that trauma that is going to eviscerate your muscle, you're going to have atrophy where you basically lose, in the case of a knee, your quadricep, your hamstring, everything goes away. Right. And so you do this prehab so that you build up muscle memory, so that you build up strength, so that your body understands what it means to recuperate. And studies show that you recuperate faster. Not only do you recuperate faster, but you oftentimes are stronger than when you're able to regain that strength fully, and you run the less of a risk of other injury, because you're doing it before you do it. And that, I think, is a perfect analogy for how we as agents need to think about how we build ourselves up. And I don't think there's enough of that in our industry, of people actually working on that, as some call it in the industry, like that personal mastery.
Right.
Yeah. So that's it on that one.
I think that was great of you to donate your knee to science, like you did.
Several ligaments have been donated to science, and a lot of the cartilage in my meniscus have been just donated to I don't know where. Somebody's.
Well,
probably.
They came up with prefab.
Yeah, prefab.
Prefab.
That sounds like something.
Prefab is a term in my industry.
Yeah,
exactly. Prefab is my term. Sorry.
All right. Well, I think it's time to do some key takeaways and finish up. What do you think? Any more questions on this? Have we solved the bullying problem in the world?
Yeah, I think we're going to walk outside and it's going to be great.
On a serious note, I obviously we're not doing that, and
Right.
we're taking a very specific industry and type of bullying, and I don't, as I said in the beginning, don't want to make light of the fact that this is pervasive in our culture right now, and it is something that is disturbing. And we owe it as to ourselves to understand what it is and what it isn't, and how to address it, and how to enter and exit all of these negotiations and interactions with dignity. So here are my key takeaways. So let's land where we started. Look, bullies have existed for all time, as we talked about. The notion of someone using fear, intimidation, or moral conflict to get what they want or to feel powerful in a moment is not new. But let's face it, bullies are emboldened right now, emboldened by reality TV, by faux leadership, by power or the promise of power, and the perception that you get more by knocking people down or stealing their lunch. I want to leave you with these 3 points to ponder and act upon as powerful, skilled negotiators and advocates for your clients. Here's the truth. Anyone who truly has nothing to lose does not need to threaten, to rush, or intimidate. They don't need ultimatums. They don't need to posture. They don't need to turn up the heat. They simply make decisions that serve their own interests. Bluster is what happens when someone wants you to feel small so they can feel powerful or hide that they are not. Every deal, number 2, every deal has something at stake. Every decision has a cost. Every party has something to lose, even when they pretend they do not. When you stay calm in the face of bluster and uncover what they fear or what they want, you do more than protect your negotiation. You protect your client and you take control of the interaction. And third, although understanding effective tactics and practical steps to dealing with bullies is important, there is no magic tactic, as we said, or clever comeback that suddenly changes their behavior. Yes, slowing the conversation down matters. Focusing on process before substance works to keep them on task. Asking better questions to unlock what's important and what the other side fears is effective. But those tools only work when they're supported by something deeper. The real work starts before the negotiation ever begins. It starts with pre-habilitation for yourself, building self-confidence, personal power, and self-worth, so you're not negotiating from a position of fear. You can respond rather than react. That internal foundation is what creates psychological safety when intimidation shows up. Without it, even the best strategies fall apart. Bullies don't lose power because you outsmart them. They lose power when you no longer need their approval, their deal, or their permission to stand your ground. And that's Shearline for today, everyone. As a reminder, you can support this show by following us, subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just go to getmorenetwork.com, and there you can check out all of the amazing shows on the More Network, including past episodes of Shearline. You can follow me all over Instagram at archway.partners, as well as on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Eirik the Expert with 2 I's. You can contact the Excelsior team at BHS by going to bhsusa.com, and you can connect with my company Archway Partners Coaching by visiting archwaypartnersinc.com to learn all about our new Mighty Network community. Jay, where can they contact you?
You can contact me on Instagram at jjbilliot_interiors.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Remember, everyone, there's a key for every lock, but it's the right combination of grooves, cuts, and teeth that lifts the pins and creates the shear line. Until next time, keep turning curiosity into connection, mystery into mastery, and keep unlocking what's possible. See you next time, everybody.